Hi friends, welcome. I hope you're doing well today. You can see that I have a new logo, new intro. I've been working on my branding. I got rid of the orange. It's just black and white now. We're becoming more and more minimalistic by the day. And soon my brand colors may just be white. But today we're going to be talking about some photos taken with a longer focal length in New York City, and we're going to talk about the benefits. First, we have this photo. We can see here that the photographer, from quite close proximity to the building, which is important, zoomed in tight on the top of the building and, of course, pointed up. point at the bottom of the building and achieve this photo. With these buildings in New York City, something that's interesting is you can shoot it from all sorts of different angles, from all sorts of different distances. And, it's not true three-dimensional space where you can just kind of fly around like in Minecraft, because it's not like the Chrysler Building is sitting in the middle of an empty field, which would be an amazing art installation, by the way. But you have a lot of different opportunities working around the buildings and things that can be in the way. And of course, you can put the buildings in the foreground as well, have some subframing elements, this sort of thing. And another good thing is that buildings, unlike people, don't tend to move that much. Although I do hear that the Empire State Building likes to vacation in the Bahamas. But it's hard to take an outstanding photo of these landmarks. For one, just because everybody's taking photos of these landmarks, right? But I would say an even more important reason is that you can't just take a camera, point it up at a building, and call it a day. It takes understanding of photography fundamentals to create remarkable photos of anything, let alone something very pretty. It applies for very pretty things and not so traditionally pretty things. Here we have something that has a very polished look, and it's printable. I would put this on my wall. And you can see that the photographer zoomed in to the top of the building and also into the haze on the top of the building, making it more prominent. And this provides a captivating aesthetic charm to the photo, as well as a daunting quality, having it go up into the clouds and also it being nighttime. And you wouldn't be able to achieve this photo in the daytime. This really interesting, beautiful contrast between cool and warm tones, and the amazing warm light coming out the top of the building. This shot couldn't happen with a 50 millimeter. It would be too wide. The character would be much different, even if you cropped it in or something like that. So a long focal length provides a distinct character to a photo, and you can see that on display here. Next, we have another photo of the Statue of Liberty, and we have some very serendipitous clouds here. Nice opening for the Statue of Liberty to shine through. And it feels like we're parallel to the head, which I find interesting. I'm not really sure where this was taken from, and I'd love to know. Framed by Ricks, where was this taken from in terms of angle, and also what lens were you using if you're watching? The reason why I say that is because I tend to tag all the people after I share these, and so most of the time I think they watch. Some of them watch, some of them don't. Either way, their photos are very useful for learning, so thank you to everyone. We have some great side lighting on the Statue of Liberty here. Lighting is perfect. It's wonderful. If the statue was turned around, this would be a print. Easy, right? So we have a lot of elements coming together here to make a very beautiful photo. Once again, polished. It's kind of cinematic feeling. Okay, next we have this photo that was probably taken with a much shorter focal length. I think if we used the previous focal length for this one, we would have a photo of her hat. So we have the subject here in the train. We have plenty of people all around. There are many technical aspects of this photo that were well executed. We have the use of compression here, which is a function of having a longer focal length to pull the subject into more prominence in the scene. We have a very busy scene here. and the photographer utilized motion blur by dragging the shutter in order to make those people kind of move around and not clash so much visually with the subject who's standing perfectly still. But the eye contact in this photo is absolutely crucial. If she was looking off to our left or our right, I don't think the photo would have worked the same way. And if her head was behind the pole, I don't think the photo would have worked the same way. So we have an excellent execution in a very crowded scene. And it's probably quite serendipitous that she happened to look straight at her as well. I don't know how long she was holding the photographer. I know she's a she. I don't know how long she was holding the camera up before the person looked. So maybe it was forced serendipity, if you will. But great shot. We have another photo with the ever iconic umbrella in the scene. And I think we need to appreciate the umbrella, because one day these devices in our hands and in our pockets, and will soon be in our brains, will create a force field around us that will block the rain, and we will have no more umbrellas. So for now, let's really enjoy the umbrella shots. They're not long here for more ever. We have a fairly average subject here. It's a lovely subject, but it's a fairly average subject, something that you would come across quite easily when you're shooting out. But it's made more interesting because of a lot of different things, and some of those things include the fact that we have a subframing element being what looks like another person with an umbrella. It looks like an identical person to the person who's our subject. And we have some repetition there. And we like patterns. We like repetition. It's very pleasing to our brains naturally. We need a hierarchical structure for a photo for it to make sense to us. Flatness is not very pleasing. So in this case, this amount of depth that we have here is very pleasant and engaging to us. And you can achieve depth through using things like subframing and lighting and shallow depth of field. But depth is a very powerful tool for making a photo come alive. Another thing is we have the steam in the background, which separates the subject from potential clutter that could be back there. This was in New York City, so I'm sure there's plenty of clutter to choose from. Multiple trash cans and delivery trucks and what have you. So, but it also introduces a rather dreamlike quality. Excellent stuff. Okay, so here's one of my photos that I took recently in New York City. I was hanging out in front of the Flatiron building. There's a lot of people moving around, and so I just stood there. And it's a really good thing to do with a long lens, is just find a spot that is very ripe for opportunity and just stand there, just look around, keep your head on a swivel. And so that's what I did here. And so the eye contact here is really helpful for this photo as well. And we have what I like to call the initial disturbance happening. So you have two different types of scenes. You have an undisturbed scene, and then you have a disturbed scene. This is a disturbed scene. He's looking at me, but it's the initial disturbance, right? He just caught eyes with my lens. But this was almost a street portrait, if you will, because, it is almost in the way that it functions as a photo, because this photo, the prominence of the subject, we have that, but this photo would have been hard to set up as a street portrait, right? I walk up to the guy and I say, hey, can I take your photo? I need you to go stand over there and then walk back towards me. And keep the bag over your head as well, right? So, you want different methods for different situations. But it has a bit of a candid street portrait feel. The fact that he's looking at me, it's like you can tell that there's this initial disturbance occurring, but at the same time, there's not a whole bunch of things around him to put him into another type of photo, if you will. He's not a silhouette surrounded by a beautiful scene of light and laughter and sunshine. It's just him. And then also the background is only enough to provide a New York-esque scene to the mix. He is the focus. Nothing's competing with him. And the long lens provided a rather cinematic quality to this versus a bit more of a raw quality that would come by being much closer with a wider angle, right? Let's imagine this with a 20 millimeter. It would be an incredibly different photo, lots more environment for sure, unless I was like right in his face. In which case, once again, it would be really interesting thinking about getting him to put the thing over his head again and then look up and then provide this very natural, authentic expression. So different approaches for different situations. Okay, here's another photo by me. In this one, I stood back and waited around for a while, watching this woman as people would come by. And I was waiting for the right moment. In this case, we have no disturbance. This is an undisturbed scene. And this is something that you can pull off with a long lens very easily. But we have the people on the right coming in. And because of that, because of her and the people both in the scene, and this was something I was trying to set up as I was waiting, we have an implied relationship between the two, right? And to me, this is one of the more powerful photos I've taken. I'm really happy with it. I love that we're able to connect with this random woman in the middle of New York City. But with a shorter lens, I couldn't wait around without affecting the scene, right? I would be there for 5 seconds and everybody would be like, what's this guy doing? So a long lens is a great method for not disturbing people. Okay, now on to another photo, which is, it's a rather apocalyptically moody photo. We have some frigid tones, and this was most likely taken from a bridge. I think I've stood in this spot before, but we have some leading lines of the highway going into the distance. Our eyes will follow that, right? We have 3 cars, a group of 3, also known as the rule of odds, and it has a nice effect on the scene. We have some points of light coming from the cars, kind of spices up the shot a little bit. And then we have an implied human element from the humans who are most likely driving these cars, although it is 2021. We have another thing that these cars provide is a sense of scale, depth, and distance between us and these buildings and everything in the scene. Little highly recognizable elements like this are very important for establishing how big or how small a scene is. But I want to pay attention to these evocative buildings. They feel big, and I almost used another term for big. So when I when I outline these videos, I will open up the dictionary app as well. It's a great app. I don't know if you guys have a Mac, I don't know if you guys use it. It's a fantastic app. It's stupid fast. It's just a dictionary and a thesaurus and all these things. So I'll use the dictionary app, go to thesaurus mode, and then I will find different words that are kind of like the word that I'm trying to say. So in this case, we have big, and we'll have many different words, huge, massive, what have you. And I almost chose colossal to say here, but I thought that would be a little bit too much following the word evocative, right? And then I found the word elephantine, which I've never heard before, but I love it. It's fantastic. And but it wouldn't quite work because it's kind of like something that is likened to an elephant. And I wouldn't say these buildings are very elephant-esque. So that didn't feel quite right. So I just chose big. Also, these buildings are quite haunting as well. And this was probably not taken with an awfully long focal length. Yeah, it couldn't have been that terribly long. And the thick haze probably helped out a lot as well in creating such a haunting feel. But what you can do with your focal length is you can, if you have a wide focal length, you can pull away from that haze. You can push the background into the background more, or you can push into that haze, right? Pull it closer, make it more prominent. Imagine if we were to take a photo of the top of these, just the top. We zoom in on the top of these buildings, these hazy silhouetted buildings. That's all that's in the frame. This photo would be very, very different. So yeah, the focal length you choose, of course, changes the character of your image. And we see here that you can choose the prominence of a background based on that focal length. Okay, on to our last photo. So this photo, I really like this photo. It's fantastic. It reminds me of one of my photos that I took in New York City as well, which is this one. But here it's kind of structured the same. But here we have a pleasing texture, or pleasing textures, as well as rather diffused reflections. And it's broken up into pleasingly distinct sections, right? And but of course our eye gravitates to the face, which is on one of those sections. It's on a thin black strip, which I think helps out the photo a lot, right? If that white strip on all the way on the right was behind his head, this photo would once again feel quite different. So very clever the way that this is framed. But another thing that's really interesting about the composition of this photo is that the subject is on the right side of the frame, and they're looking off to the right side of the frame. So generally speaking, it's a good idea to put the subject on one side of the frame and have them looking into the frame, not looking out of the frame. But sometimes it works, and this is a case where it does. It has a rather peculiar but pleasing effect the way that this is structured. It's very hard to find a composition like this that works correctly, but the photographer did a fantastic job here. It's a great indication of the skill level of the photographer. So well done. A long focal length really helped this terrific composition be what it was. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm curious, what are some of the benefits in your process of using a long focal length? I would love to see a discussion about that. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it if you made it this far. If you like and or subscribe, assuming you enjoyed what you ingested here today, that would mean a lot to me. I hope you, love, so you know what I mean? And that's where we're going to be. Peace and love.